Hello, Damien here from Cloud Technology Experts. And welcome back. In today's video, we will learn how to work with block devices like the hard disk and EBS volumes on Linux environment. Ensure to have your Ubuntu distro up and running to follow along. Alternatively, you can create an Ubuntu EC2 instance or Amazon Linux or an AWS or any cloud of your choice. I will be using AWS to do these labs. The learning objectives: by the end of this video, you will be able to launch an EC2 instance, create an EBS volume, attach the EBS volume to your EC2 instance, and then prepare the volume to be used by the Linux instance. Preparing the volume here means that you will be able to use fdisk to partition the disk. You will be able to use commands like mkfs.xfs or mkfs.xfs to format the disk, and then you will be able to use commands like mount to mount this disk or this volume onto the EC2 instance. And then once we finish with that, we'll learn how to make the changes permanent. These are the commands we'll be using: lsblk to list all the block devices, blkid to get the ID of a block device. Then we're going to use fdisk or parted to do the partitioning. Fdisk has been on for some time, but parted is fairly newer. And then to format the disk, we use commands like mkfs.ext4 or mkfs.xfs. And then we'll learn about the mount command and the umount command to mount the drive. Then we're going to use command like df to check our disk information. And then we're going to use this file called /etc/fstab to make sure that our changes are permanent whenever the server reboots. So these are the steps to prepare a disk to enable Linux to use it. In a way, it's not just only Linux. Almost every operating system follows the same format, but I put them here to remind you. I mentioned them earlier. You need to make sure you partition the disk, then you format the disk, and then you mount it, and then you make the volume persistent by putting the information in /etc/fstab. Okay, so we're going to start with the first one, which is to partition the disk, and then we're going to format, and then we're going to mount, and then change the permissions, and then we're going to put the entries in fstab and change that those changes work. And pretty much we'll be at the end of the video once we come this far. So at this point, let's basically go to AWS and use these commands to prepare the volume for EC2 instance. So first things first, create an EC2 instance. I'm going to call it VM1, and I'm going to go with the default Amazon AMI here. And when I come down here, I'm going to select my key pair. And when you come down here to this storage section, this is where we're actually going to be attaching our EBS volume. We won't do it right now, but I just want to show you that this volume size, 8 GB, is what Linux needs. So anytime you create an EC2 instance, AWS will automatically provision a disk size of 8 GB and attach it to your EC2 instance if it's a Linux. If it's Windows, let's see how much AWS allocate. If it's Windows, AWS will allocate 30 GB, which is a lot more than using Linux. Okay, so for now, we're going to use the Amazon Linux, and then we're going to make sure we select our key pair as we did earlier, and then launch it. So once we launch it, we're going to connect onto it. So that's VM1 there running. We'll connect to it whenever it's ready. Let's refresh and see if we can connect to it right now. So we'll connect. Connect. Okay, so we see that our EC2 instance is ready. Let's use the command lsblk to check our devices. Okay, so now we can see with this command that we have our disk of 8 gig size mounted on the root directory. Okay, so currently you can see that that is the only disk that we attach here. You can see from here, and all these other ones here are just the partitions. Okay, so now that we have our EC2 instance up and running, let's go ahead and create a volume. To do that, we're going to come here to EC2 instance, come down here to volumes, and we're going to provision a volume. And we're going to give it 1 gig. Now make sure anytime you're creating your volume that it is in the same AZ as the EC2 instance. I know my EC2 instance is in US East 1B, so I'm going to select that and then just say create volume. So now that I have that, let me check my volumes. Let me refresh. And I have one volume of 1 gig, which is available, and it's on US East 1B. So I can use this one here. Let me rename that one so that it's easier for us to remember. I'm going to call it vol 1 GB. Okay, let's just give it that name to make it easier as the one we're using. All right, so it's in US East 1B, and my EC2 instance is in US East 1B as well. So I should be able to attach them to each other. So let's go to the EBS volume. It's easier to do from here. Select your volume, which is already selected here. Come here to actions, and then you do attach volume and select your instance. I only have one running, so only that one came up. Select your volume, select your partition. So we're going to put it on dev SDB. As you can see here, Linux names the disk in alphabetical order: SDA, SDB, SDC, SDD. So let's use the next available one, which is dev SDB. All right, so we're going to say that and attach. Okay, so now that we attached it, whenever it's ready, if we come here and we do lsblk like we did earlier, you see that the new disk is here attached, which is of size 1 gig. Initially, you see that that wasn't there when we did the lsblk before we attached the disk, but now we can see that the EBS volume is here. Okay, very good. So now that we have this attached, let's go here to follow our instructions. Now, I put the commands here to make it easier for you to follow. So I will just copy and paste the commands, but for you, if you want, you can pause the video and be able to type the commands. So right now, I'm going to use a tool called fdisk to partition the disk. So what I'm going to do here is come here and do fdisk. I need to be root, so let's put sudo in front, sudo fdisk dev sdb, which is the device ID that we gave to it. So now we're in fdisk. It says, welcome to fdisk utility. Changes will remain in memory only until you decide to write them. So, and it's telling you here, M is for help. So type M, you see all the help. Now there are a couple of commands here, but we're going to use just a few of them. We're going to use the N to add a partition. We're going to use a P to print the partition information, and once we're done, we're going to use W to write the partition information. We're going to use W here to write the partition information. So we're not going to use a lot of the commands, but the most important ones that you will need most of the time are the ones we're going to use. So let's start with this one here, N to create a new partition. N to create a new partition. So type N and press enter. And there are two types of partitions you can create. You have the primary partition, which can be 4 of them, and you have the extended partition. So it's telling us that the default is primary partition, and if that is what you want, you just press enter. And now it's telling us that to partition a primary partition, we can do 4 because 4 of them are available. And we're going to start with 1. So again, if 1 is what you want, since it's a default, you press enter. Now it's going to tell us where the size of the disk is going to start from, and it gave us a default. So again, just press enter. So you can see most of the stuff here, you just press enter, and then it's going to do what it needs to do. At this point, you need to specify the size you want to give to your disk. So I'm going to say 500 megabyte, because I'm going to partition this into 2 partitions, and I have just 1 gig of EBS volume, so I'm going to divide it into 2. So plus 500 MB, enter, and it says created a new partition. So if you want to see this partition, you just type the letter P, and it shows you here the information about this partition. Okay, it shows you the information about the entire disk here, which is of size 1 gig, and it's of dev SDB, and the new one is that. So let's create a new one, and again, enter. Again, all these are going to be the default, so we just keep pressing enter. P for primary partition, partition 2, enter, and it's going to tell us where to start from, enter, and it's going to tell us where to end. It says that the default, and since I want to use the remaining disk size, I just press enter, and it's going to do it for me. So let's do P to see the partitions, and now I see 2 devices. Okay, very good. We're done with this. Let's make sure we save the changes with Command W, and then that will exit. And it says the partition table has been altered, and it's telling us what it did. So we're good at this point. We're done. We partitioned the disk. All right, so let's go and see what the next commands are going to be. Now that we partitioned the disk, we need to format the disk. Okay, that's the second step, format the disk. So these variables here, you don't have to use them, but I put them here just to kind of make things easier for me. So I'm setting this device, which is the environmental variable called dev to dev SDB. If you choose a different device ID, you need to make sure that you change that to correspond. So I do that. Now that I set this environmental variable, if I say echo dev, that should show me dev SDB. Okay, that's all I'm doing there. So now I have 2 partitions. I'm going to create another environmental variable and call part1, and then I'm going to set it to this dev here, and I'm going to add 1 to make it dev1. Okay, so I'm going to do no space in between them. Okay, so I'm going to change this to part 2 because I created 2 partitions. I'm just setting the variables for them. All right, so again, these are environmental variables. If you say echo part 1, it shows you dev SDB, which is what we have here, dev SDB 1. And then if we show the second one, dev SDB 2, which is what we have here. So that's all we're doing here. We're just setting the variables. But again, if you want, you can use those information directly without setting the variables, which means in that case, for example, okay, we'll use them. I'll show you in the next lines. So we're gonna do now, we're gonna partition this. So I'm gonna put this here, and this is what I was saying. If I don't want to put part 1, I can just put dev SDB1. It's the same thing. All right. So I can now make extension, mkfs ext4, and I can create a volume label. L is for volume label, and we just call it data vol. You can give it any name you want, and I can do that. Okay, so now it's formatted. The second one, I'm going to use the variable. Okay, I'm going to use a variable, so let me paste that here again, and I'm just going to change this one to 2, part 2, because that is what we define up here. Okay, so now I can just enter. The name of the volume is still the same. Okay, so blk, we have that this disk are now partitioned. So we now have second partition and we now have the first partition and the second partitions, just as we have with the other one that was partitions earlier as well. Okay, very good. So what is next? We partitioned the disk into two partitions, we formatted both of them, and now we need to mount them, right? Okay, so let's go to the next slide, and we're going to mount them. To mount them, we need to create a mount point, okay? So basically, the mount point is where this disk is going to be available. So let's make that directory there, and let's create another directory for the second one. All right, so we make two directories, ls, mnt. We should see two directories, data1, data2. All right, good. So now that we did that, let's mount them. All right, so we come back here and we mount. So again, we're using this environmental variable called part1 and part2. So we mount the first one in data1 and we mount the second one in data2. Okay, so now ls mnt data1 is where our first partition is mounted, and the second one is where our second partition is mounted. In other words, anytime I want to use this EBS volume, the first partition is available right here, and the second one is available right here. Okay, so now let's already check that everything is there. I did the lsblk. You can see that the lsblk also shows that everything is there. So we're pretty much good with this one here. This lsblk-f is just giving us more detailed information compared to when I just did the first one, lsblk, with no -f. Okay, so now we move on to the next. Now that we did that, we want to make sure that we change the permission to reflect the owner that we want to own this partition. Otherwise, since we did it as EC2-user, those should have the right permission. But this is to show you that if you want another user to have access to these mounted partitions, you have to change the permissions, or the ownership. So we're changing the ownership to EC2-user. EC2-user as a group. The first one here is the user ID, second here is the group ID. And we're using the command churn to change the ownership of that directory. And we're going to do the second one as well. Okay. So now let's also change the permission. When it comes to permissions, you can use whatever values you want, but 750 is a good one, which means that the owner has all the permissions, read, write, execute. The group has only read and write, and the others has nothing, no permission on it. Okay, so now we're pretty much done. Let's just check the IDs. Let's just check the IDs of the disk so we can mount them in fstab. So that is going to give us that, and then the second one is going to give us that. Even at that, we see the values here, so we can use them from here as well without running that command. All right, so pretty much I need this information, and I need the second one. But to put the entries, I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to use nano etc fstab. So here in this file, the format is there. We already have two of them running, so let's have that there. Let's save this. Control O, enter, Control X. Okay, cancel. Okay, the thing is we need to do this as root, so let's put sudo in front. Otherwise, it won't let us do that. So we do that, and then we come down here, and we copy this command here, and paste it there. And let's paste the second time, and then let's save it. Control O, enter, Control X. Now we need to replace those with the IDs. So I copy that, I go back to here, and the first one, the UUID, is here. So I paste it there, then I can save, Control O, enter, Control X, exit, and then we do the second one as well, which is this one here. Alright, so we go and delete this one here and paste it, and this will be data 2, and that's all we have. So Control O, save, Control X, we're out. Okay, so pretty much what we did now is that we put the entries for these two partitions inside the fstab. Now, /etc fstab is a file that Linux uses to mount the existing devices when it's loading up during boot time. So putting the information there means that anytime Linux reboots, it's going to automatically mount these devices. If we don't put it there, then of course that will not happen. But in a production environment, you don't want that to be the case, because if you have some information in that disk and you don't mount it, then the Linux server will not be able to utilize it, and that may mean you have to reboot all over again, which is not good. So right now, we have the information there. We should be good to go. And so now to test, we're going to unmount the device. And the idea is if we unmount, we'll do lsblk. You see that our first partition is no longer mounted. Initially, it was mounted in mnt data 1. Now it's no longer mounted. So as you can see here, mnt data 1, mnt data 2. But because we unmounted it, it's no longer there. So how do we test that this is working? We just do sudo mount -a, because -a is going to open that file /etc fstab, and it's going to mount all the entries there. And since we have those two entries, it's going to mount them. So let's check that they're mounted. Use that command again, lsblk, and see it's back. So that shows us that even if the server were to reboot right now, all those volumes should be mounted, which is what we want. So very good. Now finally, let's create a file in the mounted directory. Let's create that file there, and then do a listing. So we touch this file under data 1, and we see we listed it using ls-l mnt data 1. So we see that the file is there. Or if you go into mnt data 1 and you do ls, the file we just created is there. Now I do this to show you that when you have an EBS volume attached to an EC2 instance, you can actually store some information there and then disconnect the volume from the EC2 instance and attach it to another EC2 instance. And that EC2 instance will see the data that we store here. So right now, I'm going to disconnect this EBS volume from this instance, attach it to the other one, and we should see this information there. So in that sense, EBS volumes can be like USB drives that you use to attach to one computer, store some information in there, disconnect it to another computer, and then utilize the information in the other computer. Okay, so that's what we've done here so far. Since we already did that, let me now go back here and disconnect the volume. So I'm going to now disconnect it from this EC2 instance, just say detach, and it should be detached. Sometimes you have to force it, but let's see if it's detached, you see that it will become available. So now, well, the last one, okay, the one we're using is this one here. So let's refresh and wait to ensure that it's available. Yeah, now it's available. So it's no longer with this EC2 instance. So if I come here and do lsblk, you see that disk is no longer there. We now have the first one, and the second one is no longer there, which is again this or this one here. The information is gone. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to launch another EC2 instance. I'm going to launch this EC2 instance VM2, and I'm going to leave all this as default, and I'm going to select a key pair so I can log onto it, and I'm just going to say launch. Again, make sure your EC2 instance is in the same AZ as your volume. The volume and the EC2 instance has to be in the same location. So good, all of them are in US East 1B. So again, we go to the volume section. We select the volume we want to attach. We come here and say attach. So we attach it. Okay, we select again the instance, which is VM2. And then we select where we want to mount it. Let's mount it in dev SDB. Okay, so just say attach, and we should have that attached now. Let's connect to the EC2 instance. This is this one here. Let's connect. Okay, because we already attached it, if we do lsblk, we should see it here. Now, the difference between the attachment we did here and the previous one is that we don't have a need to partition the disk anymore. We don't have a need to format it anymore as well. In fact, if you did those, you're going to erase the information that was there before. So the only thing you need to do right now, though, is to mount it. So to mount, we're going to, again, create a mount point. So we do sudo mount dev, let's just call it data1 like we did the other one, and let's do, no, okay, we need to make the directory sudo mkdir -p. Let's do that. We won't do the second one, but let's do that. Now we can mount. Now we can do sudo mount dev data1. You can do sudo mount dev sdb1 into dev data1. Okay, I mounted it in dev data1, but as a matter of fact, I wanted to do it in MNT, but it doesn't matter. MNT is designed for mounting, but I already put it here in dev data1, so I just have to access it there. So if I do ls dev data1, I see the file here. The test file we created in the first computer, or in the first EC2 instance, is available here because, like I said, volumes can act like USB drives in transferring information from one server to another server, or from one EC2 instance to another EC2 instance. Okay, very good. So basically at this point, I have gone through everything I wanted to show you in this video, which is basically to learn how to create EC2 instance, learn how to create EBS volumes, learn how to attach the EBS volume to the EC2 instance, then use 3 steps preparation method, which means first of all you need to partition the disk, then you need to format it, then you need to mount it. And once you're done with that, if you want this to be permanent, make sure you open /etc/fstab and put the entries there, and that will make sure that anytime the server reboots, that the information is stored there. Okay, very good. At this point, I'm going to delete the volumes because I don't need them, and I'm done with the lab, so I'll show you how to do that. So first of all, I'm going to come here to the volume which we're using, and you will see that it's saying, let's refresh. At this point, it will say in use. So what you have there, this one is going to say in use. Okay, and you can notice that anytime you create an EC2 instance, is going to attach the root volume, which is 8 gig that I showed you earlier. When I created the second one, it also attached this 8 gig volume, which are root volumes. Okay, so because I created this one, I need to make sure I delete it. But in reality, you probably don't want to delete it because EBS volumes can act as a persistent storage device, which means that if you store information in here, it can remain here forever so long as you don't delete it. But this is just a lab environment. That's why I'm getting rid of them. Otherwise, ideally, you probably want to leave them there as a way to, preserve your data. All right, so let's detach that. And once I detach it, it will say available again. Now it's available. So again, I can use it anywhere I want to. Now that I detach it. Now let me delete it. Delete volume. Just say delete. And it's deleted. So remember, you attach and you detach. You delete the volume, then the volume disappears. If you don't delete the volume, it will be there. And if you are not within the free tier, AWS will continue to charge you. That is why it's good to remove it. Okay, so it said deleting, and so it should disappear very soon. This one here as well, I don't need it. I'm just gonna, while I'm here, delete the volume. Just type delete, and it should delete it. Now, these other ones, the 8 gig and the 8 gig, which are being used by the two EC2 instances, once you delete the EC2 instances, those will disappear. So now we're in our EC2 instances, and we have 2 of them. Let's delete both of them. Let's terminate them. Okay, so let's wait for the EC2 instances to be in terminated state. Currently is shutting down. We need to wait for it to say terminated. And you can always refresh. The point is that at this point, if I come here to the volumes are still gonna be here until the instances are terminated. So both of them are still there. So let's wait at here, make sure they're all terminated, and then it will go ahead and delete the volumes once these have been terminated. You can come back here and check. Okay, one left. So let's go back to instances and let's refresh. You can see that this one terminated, so the volume disappeared. Once this one is also in terminated state, then the volume should disappear as well. So basically what I'm saying is that the root volumes, the ones that are created by AWS will get rid of them for you whenever you deleted your EC2 instances. But the ones you created yourself, you need to make sure you delete them, otherwise they'll be there forever. And if you don't need it for anything, it means AWS could be charging you. But again, in a real environment, if you need them, you don't have to delete them because you can preserve your data right there. Okay, so this is terminated. If I come here and I refresh, all the volume should disappear. Okay, very good. Again, I've walked you through the steps for this video. Those summary of steps are here, and by the end of this video, you should be able to do all this. Create an EC2 instance, create a volume, attach it, then prepare the disk for usage. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful. If you do, subscribe to this channel so you can come back for more information on DevOps and Linux and AWS and cloud native like Docker, Kubernetes, and all of this. Okay, I hope to see you in the next video. Again, thanks for watching.